Long ago, in a small town called Dayton, Ohio, two young brothers spent their days staring at the open sky. Their names were Wilbur and Orville Wright. While other children chased kites or played ball, Wilbur and Orville watched birds glide effortlessly through the clouds. "How do they stay up there?" Orville would ask. Wilbur smiled. "Maybe one day, people will learn to fly too." The brothers began building toy gliders out of wood, paper, and rubber bands. They tested them in fields, laughing as their tiny creations looped and spun. Their mother, Susan Wright, encouraged them every step of the way. "Never stop asking how things work," she'd say. "Every invention begins with a dream." As the sun dipped behind the hills, the brothers sat under a tree, watching a hawk soar gracefully overhead. "Someday," Wilbur whispered, "we'll soar just like that." And though no one knew it then, that simple dream would one day change the world forever. Years passed, and Wilbur and Orville grew into clever young men with a passion for building things. In the bustling heart of Dayton, Ohio, they opened a small bicycle repair shop. The brothers loved how bicycles balanced, how a tiny shift in movement could keep a person steady on two wheels. "Balance," Wilbur said one afternoon, tightening a chain. "That's what flying is all about. Balance and control." Between fixing wheels and adjusting gears, the brothers sketched strange shapes on scraps of paper: wings, tails, levers. "If a bicycle can glide forward on wheels," Orville grinned, "maybe we can build one that glides through the air." Their workshop was always alive with noise: the hiss of oil, the squeak of tires, the rhythm of ideas taking shape. By candlelight, they studied books about birds, kites, and gliders, learning how air curved around wings. They didn't have fancy tools or big laboratories, only curiosity, paper, and dreams that wouldn't rest. Little did they know, their dusty bicycle shop was the birthplace of modern flight. In the year 1900, the Wright brothers packed up their tools, notebooks, and courage, and set out for a lonely stretch of beach called Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The wind there was strong, the sand soft, the perfect place to test their flying machines. Day after day, they carried their handmade glider up the dunes. "Ready?" Orville called, gripping the wooden frame. "Let's see what the wind can do," Wilbur replied with a grin. With a running start, the glider lifted into the air for only a few seconds before tumbling into the sand. The brothers laughed, dusting themselves off. "We flew!" Orville cheered. "And we crashed," Wilbur added, smiling. But they didn't give up. Every evening, they studied their notes, measuring lift, drag, and angle of attack. Each morning, they made small changes and tried again. Sometimes the wind was too strong, sometimes too still. But always, they learned something new. They weren't just building a machine. They were building the courage to defy gravity itself. After months of testing and crashing, the Wright brothers realized something important. To fly, they needed to understand the wind itself. Back home in Dayton, they built something no one had ever seen before: a small wooden box with a fan and two glass sides. "Our own wind tunnel," said Orville proudly. Inside it, they tested hundreds of tiny wing shapes, measuring how air curved and flowed. Wilbur wrote down every result carefully. Curved wings lift more, flat wings fall faster. Day after day, the brothers made discoveries that even scientists had missed. The workshop filled with the quiet hum of the fan and the steady scratch of pencils. "We're not just building wings," Orville said one night. "We're building understanding." When they finally stepped back, their table was covered with charts, sketches, and new ideas. For the first time, the dream of flight was not just imagination, it was science. It was December 17th, 1903. The air was cold and sharp on the dunes of Kitty Hawk. After years of failures, calculations, and quiet belief, Wilbur and Orville Wright stood beside a new creation, a fragile machine of wood, fabric, and courage. They called it the Wright Flyer. Wilbur steadied the wings as Orville climbed onto the lower platform, his hands trembling slightly on the controls. "Are you ready?" Wilbur shouted over the wind. Orville nodded. "Let's make history." The small engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life. Slowly, the machine began to move, bumping over the sand faster and faster until suddenly, it lifted off the ground. Just 12 seconds. Just 120 feet. But in that short flight, humanity left the Earth for the first time. The brothers laughed, cheered, and hugged, their eyes shining with disbelief and joy. The dream of flight, once thought impossible, had finally come true. When the Wright brothers returned home, they carried with them more than a flying machine. They carried proof that humans could rise above the ground and soar. But when they told people what they had done, most laughed. Men flying? That's impossible. The brothers didn't argue. Instead, they built stronger, faster flyers and invited the world to see for itself. In 1905, their new machine stayed in the air for nearly 40 minutes. Crowds gathered on the fields of Dayton, gasping as the strange contraption circled gracefully overhead. Newspapers across the country shouted the headline, "Men conquer the air." The laughter stopped. The world began to believe. Wilbur and Orville smiled quietly, knowing that their years of failure and persistence had paid off. They hadn't just built a plane, they had opened the sky to everyone. After that first flight, the world would never be the same again. News of the Wright brothers' success spread across oceans, to France, England, and beyond. Inventors everywhere began building their own flying machines. Wooden wings turned into metal. Canvas and cloth became steel and speed. Within a few short years, airplanes were soaring higher, faster, and farther than anyone had imagined. Crowds watched in amazement as pilots looped and rolled through the sky. "They've made the impossible ordinary," whispered a child, staring upward. And soon, airplanes weren't just for dreamers and daredevils. They carried mail, medicine, and eventually, people across continents. All because two brothers in a tiny bicycle shop dared to chase the wind. More than a century has passed since that cold morning at Kitty Hawk. Today, airplanes fill the sky, carrying people, ideas, and dreams to every corner of the world. But at the heart of every takeoff, there's still a whisper of that first flight, a reminder of two brothers who refused to give up. Wilbur once said, "It is possible to fly without motors, but not without knowledge and skill." The Wright brothers taught us that curiosity and courage can lift anyone higher than fear. Their workshop may be silent now, but their dream hums in every airplane engine and in every child who looks to the clouds and wonders, "What if I could fly?" Because the sky has no limits, only beginnings.